Hello, fellow learners. Let's again move with the new concept of management planning. As we can safely say that management is one of the most important aspects in day-to-day life or an organization to succeed in the unprecedented way. While we deal with obviously different tensions in day-to-day businesses, planning plays an important role and forms the very important backbone of any business to succeed. There is one thought which actually makes you quite wonder whether the thought actually is very much applicable all over in your day-to-day life as well as the businesses. The thought itself is quite thought-provoking, and that simply says, failing to plan is planning to fail. Yes, my dear friends. Unless and until you are very much sure that you have covered all the aspects or have gone that extra mile to cover the particular plan, you are obviously planning to make a disaster. It is a sure shot recipe for disaster. So, don't fail to plan in order to plan to fail. Moving forward, this is Dr. Saket Pansod from Dr. Ambedkar Institute of Management Studies and Research, and today's topic is management planning. So, what basically management planning means, I will try to introduce about it, I would like to highlight the concept, and I would like to define how the management planning works. So, let's start from what do you mean by management planning. Management planning is basically a very function of manager which actually starts from post-op, that is planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. In the name itself, it suggests that planning forms the integral part of any managerial function. Unless and until the manager is quite sure how the work is going to be done, how we are planning, and how is it going to be executed, who are the people that we need to plan around, what are our resources, what we need to consider. We are sure shot in a doom, or there is a sure shot recipe which will be obviously in a plethora of problems which is going to bring around for a very simple reason that it is not going to sustain for a longer duration unless and until we have a good planning technique and all the aspects of the planning are covered. So management planning will include planning in order to make a successful implementation of management executional goals so that we can reach from point A to point B in the most precise, apt manner by covering all the required sources and reaching there in the given plethora of time. Concept of planning would obviously be planning needs to consider all the aspects from for achieving the goal. So suppose if for example if we are planning to reach from point A to point B, we need to understand and find all possible alternatives. While planning or while finding all the suitable alternatives, we need to understand and find out all the suitable pros and cons. Without understanding the pros and cons, the planning won't be complete. And hence, the concept of planning should also highlight the emergency or initiation wherein all the intuitions or the requirement things are getting covered. And that's why planning makes important aspect while covering the different aspects in order to completion of goal. Definition of planning, which is given in the best, most precise way or the best possible manner is planning is covering and choosing the best possible alternatives to fulfill the organizational goals in the most suitable manner while keeping all the particle resources in check, which simply means the planning itself requires to choose the best possible resource, highlight the requirement, how to go ahead and move forward in the most precise of the manner. So, shall we move forward? I hope so. Now, what are the main objectives of planning? First and foremost, the main objective of planning is to reduce uncertainty. Obviously, in planning, we do choose the best of the alternatives. So, in order to choose the alternative, we find out what are all the pros and cons, ifs and buts, no's and nots, and hence, if we study them carefully enough, it is obviously probable that the uncertainty of the of reaching a particular goal or executing a particular goal and fulfilling the organizational objective will be in a higher state, and hence we can safely say that a planning is done to reduce uncertainty and fulfill the requirement or executing the desired goals with the effect of planning. The second point here is to bring cooperation and coordination. Now, as all of us are quite aware, there are 5 M's of management, which simply means man, money, machine, material, and method, which actually says that in order to coordinate between man, money, machine, method, and material, it is highly required that we need to have a separate executionary plan so that each aspect or the each resource is quite available and is allocated in the best suitable manner. Planning can also be done in order to allocate the human resource with given their by understanding their required knowledge, by highlighting their required skills, so that the proper plan or the proper product can be aligned in terms of cooperation and coordination. So planning is required and made in order to coordinate between available resources and to execute in the best possible and economical manner. Next point is to economize the operation. Every business lives to sustain, and the most probable option of sustaining a business is to make continuous profit. Unless and until you are able to increase the price, the best possible or suitable option to increase the profit would be to reduce the cost. And hence, to economize the operation would directly lead it to economization of given options or given resources and how it can be dealt in the most precise manner. By economizing the operations, it is highly probable that we will be able to increase our profit and lower down our costs. Next is to anticipate unpredictable contingencies. Now, first and foremost, let us understand what is unpredictable contingencies. Contingencies are the plans which are made that in a situation when ifs and buts happen, and hence to anticipate unpredictable contingency means to probably assess all the probable problems or bumpers that you are going to face while reaching from point A to point B in order to fulfill the planned objectives or organizational objective. So the planner has to check or cross check what are the probable outcomes, what are the probable difficulties that they are going to face in the upcoming execution, so that most of the points are taken care of. And last but not the least of the objectives would be to reduce competition. So if an organization is able to plan to the scrutiniest of the manner and to the perfectest of the taste, then it is highly probable that the organization would be able to reduce the competition in the much better and a larger way, as an executional plan as well as a better product will lead to reducing of the competition. Next, nature of the planning. While we understand the nature of the planning, it is highly important to understand that planning is a continuous process and cannot be made just in a while. So it is highly improbable that we can plan at the start of the year and then only the same plan is being followed. It is a dynamic process; it has to be continuously followed, and hence there are obviously different things or different contributory factors which are given. First is contribution to objectives. As we discussed, there are different objectives, several objectives which a plan needs to fulfill, and hence a planning needs to fulfill all these objectives. Second, planning is an intellectual process. Planning needs a lot of thorough thinking, calculation of ifs and buts. It also needs a thorough thought out process wherein all the aspects and probable implications and aspirations are being taken care of. It is highly important for a planner to understand that there are many problems or situations wherein they cannot be accounted for, and hence a planner has to be dynamic and intellectual enough to handle all these problems. Decision making. Planning around decision making is just like summer without the May heat. So it is almost goes hand in hand. Uh, while planning, you need to make the best of decision, and while making decision, you have to have the best of the plan. So they are. We can safely say that they're the coins sides of the same coin. Unless and until you are able to take a particular decision or perfect decision, it is highly required, which is highly required. It cannot be dilated or described in a different manner, and hence decision making plays a really important role. Next would be primarity of planning function. So obviously planning is a primary function, as earlier we have discussed that without discussing or without understanding the planning, we cannot move forward in the post-op as well. Planning has to be futuristic and time bound in nature. There cannot be a vague plan, my dear friends. Whenever we talk about planning, it has to be a time bound activity and this future. Can we plan our past or can we plan our present? I really doubt so. The most of the people would be answering in a negative and cannot be affirmative, and hence planning is always a futuristic process. It has to have a time bound. There cannot be a vague planning that it's like when I grow up, I would like to be Sachin Tendulkar. But if you are not been able to give a particular timeline to a structure, you are not giving enough work or planning enough to work hard or concentrate on your skill. It's a unlimited and timeless process which cannot be fulfilled. Adaptability. Well, planning has to have a particular adaptability wherein it has to be flexible and it has to be adaptable to the situation. As we earlier said, that planning is very much dynamic, and hence it should go hand in hand in order to cover up for the required deviations or the problems which are unplanned. See, my dear friends, it is no hidden fact that in irrespective of however what we plan meticulously, there are going to be situations we are unplanned, and hence a planner has to be dynamic and quite thoughtful in order to make the intellectual process again and adaptable and make it more adaptable to suit for the relevant requirement. It's an ongoing process, as we discussed earlier. It is going to be an ongoing process. It's not a one-time process. It has to be thought out throughout the year. Next is the planning should be realistic. It cannot be चांद तारे तोड़ लाऊं सारी दुनिया पर मैं चाहूं बस इतना सा ख्वाब है, which is one of the very famous song from Bollywood. I really feel really envy such things, though it cannot be it can only be quantified as a dream and cannot be a realistic plan. Planning has to give us a fixing priority. That simply means prioritizing work or selecting the best possible product or the work which has to be planned further or selected in order to nullify others' effect would require fixing of priorities. So basically, it gives you a ranking and rationalizing the most important of the work. So we will be moving forward. So there are four types of planning that we are going to discuss. First is operational planning. Operational planning is your day-to-day planning, how the work is going to be done. That is, suppose for example, it can have the number of shifts or maintenance of the machineries, giving away the number of holidays, declaring holidays, the work times. These are your operational and daily needs, and so these are your daily planning. So they are operational planning. It does not require much of deviation. Operational planning are generally categorized under your day-to-day and regular basis planning. Intermediate planning. Intermediate planning is generally defined as the uh, planning which is required to be carried out in the middle of the work process. So suppose for example, if a particular machine is being overworked and you feel that there is a need of maintenance activity, or there is a need of repair or replacement of any particular part, then it is basically categorized under intermediate planning. These plannings are not generally planned, but may be needed to be executed during the work session, and they are not planned at the beginning or end of the session, and hence they are called as intermediate planning. Contingency plan is basically a backup plan, which simply means that we may have a plan A, we may have a plan B, which is required so that if there is a lacuna or a loophole in plan A, we do have a sufficient backing or intellectual process for flowing behind to execute the plan B as well. Strategic planning can be defined as a long-term plan which is required to execute the strategy or fulfill the objectives of the firm or the organization so that the strategy can be easily implemented and executed. Moving forward. Okay, so let us understand the planning process. This is basically planning process which is required in terms of planning, how that is to be executed. So first would be awareness of opportunities and problems. It is highly important for any planner to scrutinize and understand what are the different opportunities and problems which may crop up. So basically this is called as data gathering. Unless until you are able to gather the data, it is highly improbable that the opportunities and problems are being scrutinized and shared, and hence it is required that we basically plan and execute all the opportunities and problems that may crop up. Secondary is collection and analysis of information. All the information which is collected has to be scrutinized, has to be sanitized in order to make it into a more useful data. Unless and until information is being sanitized and scrutinized, it cannot turn into data, and it will remain an only information. When it is processed and made to fit to order, then it may turn into a more suitable or implementable data. Next will be determination of objective. The planning has to be executed by following objective. It can be to improve, let's say, for our manufacturing capacity, to improve our sustainability, to improve the long lastingness, to decrease cost, to decrease the maintenance cost. It can be anything. So while planning, we need to understand that the objective has to be maintained and mentioned so that all of the factors can be submerged in and around towards the objectives. Next is alternative course of action. So as we previously discussed, it is highly required that the alternative course of actions are probably planned. So it is like contingency planning, plan A, plan B, plan C. So if some plan crops up with a loophole, or there is some loophole, obviously you can change the plan and still fulfill or reach to your end goal. So that's why it is the alternative course of action. Second is evaluation of alternatives. All the alternatives are needed to be evaluated for their suitability and implementability. Unless and until all the alternatives are evaluated, you cannot move further. There cannot be a single solution or a single alternative. Otherwise, it won't be a plan. It will be a simple implementation. So it is basically choosing a best possible alternative. For that, different alternatives are being evaluated and selected. We must have a backup plan. There should always be a selection plan. There should always has to be a secondary plan, wherein if something botches up, or if some probably problem comes up, you have to have a secondary plan in order to be executed in the best possible manner. All the employees are to be chosen so that the participation employees is executed in the must. For a very simple reason, we can safely say that unless and until we are planning a particular session, it is improbable, or it is impossible that employee without employees contribution, the participation would fail and the plan would obviously fail, and hence it is highly improbable that the plan would succeed, and it is very much advisable that the participation of employees is taken care of. And last but not the least, it is important that the follow-up is taken care of. Without the follow-up, the planning executionary product won't be no. It will be strictly a problematic thing, and hence we need to have a follow-up wherein the planning process is complemented. I hope that managerial planning process was discussed in detail, and all the queries were solved. Fellow learners, keep reading, keep learning, enjoy. Thank you so much.